it means to value yourself in a relationship. Do you think it puts too much responsibility on women, or is it empowering?
That's such a thought-provoking question. I initially read it as empowering, a call to recognize your worth and not settle for less. But I can also see how it could be interpreted as placing the onus on women to fix men, or somehow be responsible for their actions. It's definitely something that could spark some interesting debate.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jayne and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Welcome back to Witter, your shortcut to a deep dive on books. For busy minds like you, this month, we're amplifying Black voices in honor of Black History Month. And today, we are unpacking Jayne Allen's Black Girls Must Die Exhausted.
It's such a compelling read, isn't it? This novel plunges us into the life of Tabitha, a 30-year-old Black woman in LA who's juggling a lot: career aspirations as a TV reporter, a relationship with her sometimes clueless boyfriend Mark, and the ever-present pressure of societal expectations.
You know, that Barbie world analogy really hit home for me. Like, when do we actually get to that perfectly organized, happy ending? Because for Tabitha, it feels like adulting is anything but easy.
And that's where Allen's brilliance shines through.
Right.
She doesn't shy away from the complexities of being a Black woman in today's America.
One of the things that really struck me early on was Tabitha's experience in her career. She's clearly talented and driven, but it feels like she constantly has to prove herself, even conform to white beauty standards, just to get ahead.
That 10 times better mentality.
Right.
It's heartbreaking because it speaks to a larger systemic issue. I mean, how much of that pressure is internalized versus imposed by the media she works in? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just about her career ambitions. There's this ticking biological clock. That adds another layer of stress, especially since her boyfriend, Mark, isn't exactly enthusiastic about starting a family anytime soon.
And then there's the financial burden of egg freezing. It's almost casually mentioned. But the fact that her insurance won't cover it just underscores how these systems are often stacked against women, especially Black women.
This sense of being unheard or unseen comes up again in that chilling scene where Tabitha gets pulled over by the police for seemingly no reason. The fear she describes, the way she references cases like Philando Castile and Breon King, it's a stark reminder of the very real danger that Black people face daily.
And what's even more unsettling is Mark's dismissive reaction to her experience. It's like he can't even comprehend the depth of her fear, which highlights a real disconnect, maybe even a privilege he has. Do you think that disconnect is intentional or just a lack of awareness on his part?
That's a great question. And honestly, is one I kept asking myself throughout the book. Is Mark intentionally uncaring? Or is he just oblivious due to his privilege? It's a nuance that I think Allen handles really well, leaving it open for interpretation.
It certainly adds another layer to their relationship dynamics. Speaking of relationships, let's talk about Tabitha's close-knit circle of friends, Alexis and Layla. Each of them brings a different perspective on love, career, and navigating life as a Black woman.
Alexis's focus on appearances and playing the game really struck me. I'm curious, did you see that as more satirical? Or was it a sadly realistic portrayal of how some Black women feel they need to operate in certain spaces?
It's a fascinating question, because I think it's a bit of both.
Right.
Allen cleverly uses satire to highlight this pressure to conform, but it's also rooted in a very real truth about societal expectations and how they impact Black women.
And it's interesting to contrast Alexis with Layla, who comes across as more pragmatic, almost cynical at times. But both of them, in their own way, offer Tabitha a sense of support, at least until they have a falling out, which, again, forces Tabitha to rely on the one constant in her life, her Granny Tab.
Granny Tab is such a source of wisdom and strength throughout the story. Her line about men having plans for you really resonated with me. It's blunt, but it also gets to the heart of what it means to value yourself in a relationship. Do you think it puts too much responsibility on women, or is it empowering?
That's such a thought-provoking question. I initially read it as empowering, a call to recognize your worth and not settle for less. But I can also see how it could be interpreted as placing the onus on women to fix men, or somehow be responsible for their actions. It's definitely something that could spark some interesting debate.
And that's what I love about this book. It doesn't offer easy answers or pat solutions. It raises important questions about relationships, societal expectations, and the complexities of being a Black woman in a world that often feels designed to make you question your own value. And that sense of questioning your value is something that Tabitha grapples with throughout the book, both personally and professionally. We see it in her relationship with Mark, but it's also woven into her career aspirations, the desire to achieve the American dream, but on her own terms.
That balancing act between ambition and authenticity.
Right.
I mean, she gets promoted to senior reporter,
Yeah.
which is a huge accomplishment, but she's still navigating a predominantly white workplace where her voice isn't always valued.
It makes you wonder how much of that exhaustion the title refers to is about the constant code switching, the need to adapt to fit in, rather than being able to fully embrace her own identity.
It's like she's carrying the weight of all these expectations, societal, familial, professional, and trying to figure out where she fits in. And then there's the added layer of dealing with infertility, which brings its own emotional and physical toll.
And it's not just Tabitha's personal journey that we see unfolding.
Right.
The story also delves into the intergenerational trauma that's been passed down through her family. That revelation about Granny Tab's experience with domestic violence at the hands of Tabitha's grandfather was incredibly powerful.
It was heartbreaking to read, especially knowing how that trauma ripples through generations, shaping Tabitha's own views on relationships and her own sense of self-worth. But it also highlights the incredible resilience of Black women, their ability to not only survive, but thrive in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. And I think that theme of resilience is further emphasized in the way Tabitha handles the Daquan Jenkins case. This is where we see her journalistic skills and her commitment to social justice really come to the forefront. This isn't just about reporting the news. It's about uncovering the truth and holding those in power accountable.
This case feels like a turning point in the book for Tabitha, wouldn't you say? She's no longer just trying to make it in a system that's rigged against her. She's actively working to expose the injustice within that system, specifically the racial profiling and police brutality that led to Daquan's wrongful accusation and shooting.
It's a powerful reminder of the impact that investigative journalism can have, especially when it comes to amplifying marginalized voices and shedding light on systemic issues. Did you find the resolution of the Daquan Jenkins case satisfying? I felt like the book skimmed over the impact her reporting had on the police department and the community.
I agree. I was hoping for a bit more exploration of the aftermath, maybe even a deeper dive into the specific changes that Tabitha's reporting brought about. It felt a little rushed, given the weight of the case itself.
Perhaps that's where the second book in the trilogy picks up. It would be interesting to see how Tabitha navigates the long-term fight for systemic change, not just the immediate victory of getting Daquan's case overturned.
And I'm also curious to see how her personal life evolves. That decision to embrace her natural hair felt like a significant moment of self-acceptance. But is that enough to truly break free from the exhaustion of constantly trying to meet societal expectations?
That's the question, isn't it? Is it possible to find a balance? To achieve success without sacrificing your well-being, your identity, your sense of self?
And what does success even look like for Tabitha? Is it about career advancement, finding love, or something deeper, something more intrinsic?
These are the questions that Allen leaves us grappling with, and I think they're questions that resonate far beyond the pages of this book. They're questions we all need to ask ourselves as we navigate this complex world.
They're questions that I think Black women, in particular, are often forced to confront in ways that others may not fully understand.
Speaking of understanding, one thing that I found particularly striking about the book was the way it portrayed the internal conflict between wanting to be seen as an individual while also acknowledging the shared experiences and struggles that come with being a Black woman in America.
That tension between individuality and collective identity is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, regardless of their background. But it definitely takes on a different dimension when you're part of a group that's been historically marginalized and stereotyped.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes Black Girls Must Die Exhausted it's such a powerful read. It gives us a glimpse into the complexities of that experience, the joy, the pain, the resilience, the exhaustion. But ultimately, it's a story of hope, of finding your voice and claiming your space in the world.
And speaking of claiming your space, this book really made me reflect on the importance of representation, not just in media, but in all aspects of life. It's so powerful to see yourself reflected in a story, to feel like your experiences are being acknowledged and validated.
Representation matters.
Right.
It shapes how we see ourselves in the world around us. And when you're constantly bombarded with images and narratives that don't reflect your reality, it can be incredibly damaging.
It makes you question your own worth, your own place in the world. And I think that's what makes the work of authors like Jayne Allen so crucial. They're giving voice to experiences that have been historically silenced or marginalized.
They're challenging the dominant narratives, pushing us to think critically about the systems and structures that perpetuate inequality. And they're inspiring a new generation of readers and writers to embrace their own stories and to demand to be seen and heard.
What do you think Allen is trying to say with that powerful title, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted? Is it a literal death?
Yeah.
Or a metaphorical one?
I think it's both, isn't it? It's about the physical toll of carrying the weight of racism, sexism, and societal expectations. But it's also about the emotional and mental exhaustion of constantly having to fight for your right to exist, to be seen, to be heard.
It's about the danger of internalizing those messages, of believing that you have to be 10 times better, of sacrificing your own well-being in order to achieve success.
And it's about the need to break free from those expectations, to redefine success on your own terms, to prioritize your own health and happiness.
This book has definitely left me with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It sparked a conversation, a deeper awareness of the complexities of the Black experience. And I think that's a valuable starting point.
It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, more voices to listen to, more stories to be told.
So, for our listeners who are already familiar with Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, what resonated most with you? Was it Tabitha's journey of self-discovery, the exploration of intergenerational trauma, or perhaps the fight for social justice in the Dequan Jenkins case? Share your thoughts with us.
And for those of you who haven't yet read the book, we highly encourage you to add it to your list. It's a powerful and thought-provoking read that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, let's remember that supporting Black authors is not just a one-time thing. It's about making a conscious effort to seek out diverse voices and perspectives year-round.
It's about expanding our understanding of the world and challenging our own biases.
It's about celebrating the richness and complexity of human experience in all its forms.
Beautifully said.
So, until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep those conversations going. Thanks for joining us on Witter.
Thanks for listening to Witter, Who Has Time to Read, produced by One Media. Please support the author by purchasing the book or audiobook using the link in the description. It's a great way to help keep the art of writing alive. And stay in the loop. Subscribe to our newsletter for updates on weekly deep dives. And don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest our next deep dive at witterpodcast@gmail.com.